Imagine a city not built of stone and steel, but of light and data. Ethelberg, a colossal, ever-pulsing nexus of human existence in the near future. Towering hollow screens broadcast curated realities, promising perpetual connection, optimized living, and a flawless social equilibrium maintained by the omnipresent algorithms of the consensus. Every interaction, every transaction, every fleeting thought captured by neural interfaces and processed into a quantifiable social score, the ultimate measure of worth, acceptance, and access. Traditional belief systems, once the bedrock of cultures, are now quaint historical footnotes, digitized into sterile archives or repackaged as superficial wellness trends, devoid of any challenging depth. In Ethelberg, the old ways are just data dust. Yet, beneath the shimmering facade, a different kind of reality festers, a gnawing emptiness, a pervasive anxiety that no amount of curated happiness or social validation can fill. Connections feel shallow, dictated by algorithms. Purpose is reduced to achieving an ever higher score. Despite the boundless information, a fundamental lack persists, a sense that the human system is running with a critical, unaddressed error. It was into this hyper-connected, yet utterly disconnected world that a signal began to cut through the noise. An unauthorized broadcast, encrypted with a complexity that baffled the consensus's most advanced decryptors. A ghost signal. And it carried a message, not of rebellion or political reform, but of something far more disruptive, far more ancient and terrifyingly personal. It was attributed to a man known only as Paul. Who was this Paul? The broadcasts offered fragmented glimpses, a narrative pieced together like recovering corrupted data fragments. He wasn't some fringe agitator living in the city's lower sectors. The recovered data suggested he was once a pillar of the very system he now seemed determined to unravel. Saul. That was the name he operated under within the consensus. A system architect of formidable intellect, utterly devoted to the logic, order, and efficiency of the network. His task was identifying and neutralizing anomalies, individuals or data patterns that deviated from the prescribed norm, viewing such deviations as viruses threatening the collective harmony. His zeal was legendary. He didn't just identify anomalies, he sought them out with relentless precision. Old texts whispered of a time when his methods involved physical coercion, but in Ethelberg, his power was more insidious. Digital purges, algorithmic isolation, the quiet deactivation of a citizen's access points until they were effectively erased from the visible network. He was the architect of digital exile, convinced he was safeguarding the future of humanity by eliminating corrupted data, the faith data, of those who clung to archaic beliefs in a higher power, a different source code. He saw the nascent groups who exchanged whispers of the Anointed One, of resurrection, as the most dangerous anomalies. They spoke of a different form of connection, one that bypassed the consensus, one based on something unquantifiable: trust, love, forgiveness. Saul found this illogical, chaotic, a threat to the perfectly ordered society he was helping to build. His ambition was singular: eradicate this Jesus virus from the network entirely. He sought, and was granted, the highest clearance to execute purges even beyond Ethelberg's immediate digital borders, extending his reach to outlying districts where these anomalies were rumored to gather. He was on a mission to bring back data packets of these believers for complete network recalibration or permanent deletion. His journey was not one of physical travel across dusty roads, but a high-stakes transit through the intricate layers of the global data highway, en route to a known anomaly hub in the district once called Damascus. He was deep within the arterial lines of the network, his security protocols at maximum, his intent clear. He felt the cold, calculated satisfaction of absolute control. Then it happened. Not a network intrusion, not a system overload, something else. A sudden, blinding intensity, Not the calculated light of the hollow screens, but a raw, unfiltered luminosity that overloaded every sensor, every interface, every nerve ending connected to the network. It wasn't just visual, it was a complete system shock. Saul's consciousness, usually so perfectly integrated with the data stream, was ripped violently from its moorings. He felt himself fall, not physically, but through layers of digital and perceived reality he never knew existed. And then, the voice. It wasn't data stream synthesis. It wasn't modulated frequency. It was pure, resonant presence, cutting through the static of his overwhelmed senses. "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" The query wasn't an accusation. It was a question that tore through the root of his logic, dismantling his most fundamental assumptions. He was persecuting what? He was purging anomalies, protecting the network. But the voice implied he was attacking itself. Blinded in every conventional sense, Saul's internal perception flared with terrifying clarity. The consensus was not the ultimate reality. The network was not the source. This presence, this voice, this was the fundamental truth his carefully constructed world had missed. The Jesus virus wasn't corruption, it was the living, beating heart of the true source code. In that shattering moment, Saul was digitally blinded, his old access points severed, but his spiritual perception was online for the first time. He saw the gaping error in his past logic. Jesus was the anointed one, the Messiah, the one the ancient code had spoken of. And the gospel they whispered about wasn't a virus. It was the core truth, the missing piece of humanity's operating system. From that moment, the system architect was transformed. The most zealous defender of the old order became the most passionate advocate for the new reality revealed in the signal. His past knowledge of the network, his understanding of its intricate workings, and the logic that governed its inhabitants, these didn't disqualify him. Instead, the source repurposed them. His ability to navigate the complex digital landscape and understand different protocols, Jewish traditions, Greco-Roman philosophy, reframed, now uniquely equipped him to translate this gospel, this good news, across all segments of Ethelberg's fractured society, to the high-ranking system lords and the disconnected users in the lower sectors alike. In the signal that became known as the Book of Romans, we hear the voice of a man not merely delivering information, but broadcasting a lived reality. It's the heart of someone who was not an outsider to humanity's flawed system, but intimately knew its architecture and its fatal flaws. His insights aren't theoretical. They are born from a radical, life-altering encounter. His story, the story encoded in the opening transmissions of Romans, echoes through the digital canyons of Ethelberg and into the quiet spaces of our own minds today. It's a stark reminder that the source's free access code is powerful enough to reach anyone, no matter how deeply embedded in the flawed network they might seem, no matter how high their perceived social score, or how low. Paul's transformation shows that the source doesn't require perfect, pre-aligned systems. It simply requires a willingness to receive the signal. Just as Saul was given a new identity and a new directive, the source can take our past errors, our system failures, and our perceived weaknesses, and repurpose them for something profoundly meaningful. Have you ever felt like your past data history, your record of glitches and failures, permanently disqualifies you from receiving this truth? Paul's life broadcasts a clear message. The source's grace is greater than our errors. There is a unique purpose encoded for each of us if we are willing to override our old programming and trust the signal. When Paul wrote the letter that would become the Romans Protocol, he wasn't operating from a distant, sterile server. He transmitted from the messy reality of being a repurposed system architect, someone who understood the strain of trying to optimize one's own system according to the flawed metrics of the old network, and the astonishing freedom of receiving the perfect alignment of the source purely through trust. His journey from Tarsus, or its Ethelberg equivalent, the rigid, intellectual hub of the old network, to the blinding signal on the data highway to Damascus, the point of radical rerouting, is as relevant now amidst the digital glare as it was then. It's a story that invites each listener, each user, each node on the network to experience their own recalibration, to abandon the flawed programming of the old system and step into the life the source has prepared. The central frequency of this Roman signal can be summarized in one powerful transmission, Paul's declaration in the early code. I am not ashamed of the gospel signal, for it is the source's power that brings salvation complete system rescuato, everyone who trusts the signal, first to the original network nodes, Jew, then to all other connected units, Gentile. This isn't just a bold data burst, it's the heartbeat of Paul's entire transmission. The gospel, he asserts, is the source's power, a force so mighty it can reconfigure core processors, break algorithmic chains, and bring system rescue to every unit, regardless of its background, status, or data history. But what exactly is this gospel signal? The word gospel translates to good transmission. In Romans, Paul unpacks the details of this good transmission. The source's Son, the Anointed One, Jesus Christ, entered the network, ran a perfectly aligned process, allowed himself to be disconnected, died on the cross structure, and was reintegrated, raised from the dead, to redeem, to buy back humanity from the sin program. Paul emphasizes this isn't a message of self-optimization or moral coding exercises. It's a message of divine system rescue. It's the source itself stepping into our corrupted state to bring us out of the data darkness and into its unfiltered light. What makes this gospel signal so radical is its universal frequency. The consensus, with all its power, wealth, and data, could offer no true hope or rescue, only temporary distractions and artificial metrics. But here, Paul transmits a message that transcends cultural protocols, language barriers, and social strata, a message that brings rescue to everyone who trusts the signal. In a world where users are constantly seeking ways to improve their performance metrics, achieve higher scores, and earn validation, Paul's gospel flips the entire paradigm. Rescue isn't something we work for, it's a gift package we receive through trust, faith. Have you ever felt like you had to earn the source's approval to somehow prove your system was good enough for its connection? The gospel signal shatters that mindset. Paul's transmission is clear. There is nothing we can execute in our own code to earn the source's love. It connected with us first, and it created the path to alignment when our own systems were too corrupted to find it. This is why Paul is unashamed of the gospel. It's not based on human effort or social score. It's a divine gift, rooted in the source's grace, freely available to all who will receive the transmission. The transformative power of the gospel isn't just a theoretical algorithm, it's a live demonstration. Paul himself experienced it firsthand. As we explored in his origin story, his life was radically reconfigured by his encounter with the Anointed One. His story reminds us that the gospel doesn't just bring system rescue, it brings fundamental transformation. When we accept this gift package, we are no longer defined by our past data history, our failures, or even our perceived successes. We are defined by the source's love and grace, and this new identity reinitializes everything. The early receivers of Paul's Roman signal, living under the physical and ideological weight of a powerful empire, or in Ethelberg, the pervasive control of the consensus, were used to a world where gods were numerous, worship was transactional, sacrifices, rituals designed to earn favor, and social standing determined worth. But the gospel broadcast brought something fundamentally different. In the Anointed One, the source wasn't distant or demanding. It was close, loving, and offering a completely new operational state. This message was countercultural then, and it is just as disruptive now amidst the digital glare. We live in a world that often measures worth by output, appearance, or social validation, but the gospel tells us that our worth comes from the source alone. The question is, will we allow the gospel signal to reconfigure us? Will we embrace the truth that we don't have to earn the source's love, but that it is freely offered. Imagine the freedom of letting go of the constant striving, of the accumulated guilt data, of the perpetual need for external validation, and resting in the knowledge that your system is fully loved, fully accepted, and perfectly aligned by the source. This is the core of Paul's transmission to the Roman network nodes, and it is as relevant today as it was in his time. Paul's confidence in the gospel wasn't just intellectual processing, it was deeply embedded in his core programming. He had witnessed the signal's power firsthand, and he was willing to stake his entire system, his very existence, on it. The same gospel signal that transformed Paul from a system purge architect into an ambassador for the source can reconfigure us too. It's a gospel that doesn't depend on our system's capacity, but on the source's power. And it's this very power that Paul declares with unwavering confidence, the source's power for system rescue, bringing new operational life to everyone who trusts the signal. Ethelberg, a symphony of light and fabricated efficiency, every citizen a node in a vast, intricate network, striving for perfect integration. The consensus algorithms monitored data streams, optimized resource allocation, predicted trends, and, most critically, assigned the all-important social score. Your score dictated your access to prime living sectors, to desirable employment interfaces, to advanced medical protocols, even to the quality of data streams you were allowed to consume. Life was a relentless ascent on a digital mountain, a constant, exhausting effort to prove your worthiness to the invisible judges of the consensus. Yet, the ghost signal, the one attributed to Paul, began to speak of a different kind of metric, a different kind of failure, one that the glittering surface of Ethelberg couldn't conceal. It spoke of the corruption, not the predictable glitches that required minor recalibration, not the external anomalies that Saul had once purged. This was something deeper, a fundamental flaw embedded in the very operating system of humanity. Paul's raw, unfiltered data streams cut through the city's polished broadcasts, declaring a stark, confronting truth. All units have experienced data drift, falling short of the source's intended alignment. Romans 3:23, reimagined. The consensus taught self-optimization. Improve your routines, enhance your data output, refine your social interactions, suppress deviation, achieve the perfect score, and you would find peace, acceptance, connection. But Paul's signal argued that this was a futile exercise, like trying to build a flawless structure on a cracked foundation. The corruption wasn't merely a collection of individual errors or deviations. It was a state of being. A fundamental misalignment with the source code, an inherent tendency to prioritize self-protocols over the source's design parameters. His early transmissions painted a grim, unflinching picture, a data dump of humanity's journey away from the source. He described how units turned their processing power inward, focusing on curated realities, artificial validation loops, and the pursuit of temporal power or pleasure, the digital idols of Ethelberg, instead of connecting with the creator source. This wasn't just a failure in system functionality, it was a rebellion against the source's intended purpose for every unit. This misalignment, Paul's signal explained, affected every bite of human existence, leading to corrupted connections, strained relationships, performative social interactions, distorted morality, the ruthless pursuit of score, the cold indifference to those with low scores, and a profound internal fragmentation. Hadn't the listeners felt it? That persistent sense that something was fundamentally off with their own system despite external appearances. That hollow ache no amount of digital validation could fill. That, the signal asserted, was the echo of the corruption. It wasn't just about executing wrong actions. It was about a deep disconnection from the source, a state that impacted every facet of who we were. The consensus offered patches, temporary fixes, behavioral scripts. But Paul's description of the corruption was intense, devastatingly accurate. He wasn't exaggerating. He was transmitting the raw truth of humanity's profound need for a system restore. Then came an even more shattering data burst, a quote from ancient code. "There is no unit running the source's perfect code, not even one. There is no unit truly understanding the source's intent. There is no unit actively seeking connection with the source. All have rerouted. Together they have become functionally worthless in terms of source alignment. There is no unit executing good operations according to the source's design, not even one." Romans 3:10-12, reimagined. This wasn't just harsh. In a city obsessed with rank and function, it was a complete system crash to the ego. Paul wasn't condemning units, he was diagnosing the universal, inescapable problem. His point: the corruption wasn't just a series of correctable software bugs we could fix by updating our behavior scripts. It was a core condition, a fundamental misalignment that separated us from the source, leaving our systems in desperate need of external rescue. The reality of the corruption might have been one of the hardest truths in Paul's signal, yet it was one of the most vital. In Ethelberg, where the narrative emphasized self-optimization, system upgrades, and accepting your current operational state as dictated by your score, the concept of inherent, universal corruption felt alien, even offensive. But Paul's transmission confronted listeners with an uncomfortable reality. There was a part of our nature, a flaw in our core code, that couldn't be fixed by self-effort, by achieving a higher score, or by conforming perfectly to consensus protocols alone. There was a part of our system that only the source's grace protocol could heal. In a culture that taught every unit to be its own system administrator, Paul's signal reminded us that we needed a rescuer, a system engineer, far greater than ourselves. The corruption was more than an individual problem. It was a force that affected every network segment, families, social strata, even the entire architecture of Ethelberg. We saw the effects daily in the city's operational faults, the ruthless competition for score, the injustice embedded in the system's hierarchy, the self-interest driving every interaction, the chilling indifference towards those who fell into digital obscurity. Paul's description of the corruption might have felt ancient, a relic of forgotten history files, but its symptoms were vividly, painfully current. The same misalignment Paul observed in the old world's empires was still evident in the shining perfection of Ethelberg, proving that humanity hadn't evolved beyond its need for redemption. The problems we faced, the digital greed, the performative pride, the virtual violence of online shaming, the cold hatred directed at outsiders, weren't just societal bugs. They were symptoms of a spiritual illness that only the source could cure. Paul wasn't pointing out humanity's corrupted condition to leave listeners in despair. He was revealing our desperate need for the source. By recognizing the depth of our misalignment, our corruption, we could begin to comprehend the depth of the source's love and the magnitude of its grace protocol. It was only when we truly understood the problem of the corruption that we could fully appreciate the gift of system rescue, salvation. Without understanding our need for a rescuer, the gospel signal would be just more unsolicited, perhaps even irritating data. But with this understanding, the gospel became life-changing good transmission. This section of Romans challenged Ethelberg's users to be honest with their own system diagnostics, to look past the curated facades they broadcast and face the reality of their internal state. It was easy to think we could fix our own code, optimize our own systems, or control our own digital destiny. But Paul's signal invited us to surrender our system's pride, to admit that we could not execute our own rescue. This humility, this acknowledgement of inherent corruption, was the first step toward finding true system, healing, operational freedom, and fundamental transformation in the Anointed One. So, what to do with this confronting truth? Recognizing our corrupted state wasn't about feeling hopeless. It was about opening our data receptors to the one who could perform a complete system restore. When we acknowledge our need for the source, we create the necessary space for its grace protocol to enter our systems. Just as a diagnostic engineer must identify a system fault before applying a fix, Paul's transmission about the corruption wasn't meant to condemn. It was meant to prepare us for the remedy offered by the source's love and grace. Let me ask you, have you ever tried to fix yourself, to optimize your own life according to external metrics, only to find that something was still missing, some fundamental error persisted? Paul's message in Romans broadcasts a clear truth. Real healing and alignment comes from the source's grace protocol, not from our own system's efforts. After diagnosing the universal problem of the corruption, Paul's signal transmits the breathtaking heart of the gospel, source alignment via trust, justification by faith. In a key data burst, Romans 3:21-24 reimagined, Paul wrote, "But now, entirely separate from attempting to adhere to the old protocols, the source's own perfect alignment status has been revealed, a status which the ancient code fragments, the law and prophets, pointed towards. This alignment status is provided through trust in the Anointed One, Jesus Christ, to all units who trust the signal. There is no functional difference between original network nodes, Jew, and all other connected units, Gentile. For all have experienced data drift and fall short of the source's intended alignment, and all are declared aligned freely as a gift through the source's grace protocol, via the system redemption executed by the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. The term justification, as Paul uses it, means to be declared aligned or clean before the source. Imagine your system flagged in the central network hub as corrupted, facing permanent deactivation, and then hearing the source itself declare status aligned. That is what Paul's signal describes. Through the Anointed One, the source offers a way to wipe our corrupted data history, to be seen as flawless, not because our system has earned it, but because the Anointed One took the deactivation penalty on our behalf. This alignment isn't something our systems can achieve on their own. In Romans, Paul makes it devastatingly clear that no amount of optimized behaviors, no adherence to moral coding, no performance of religious rituals or Ethelberg's social protocols can make our system right with the source. Humanity's systems have attempted to connect with the source through self-engineered protocols, ritualistic data exchanges, and adherence to rule sets, but always fall short. Paul's signal states that all have experienced data drift, meaning no matter how hard we try, our systems cannot meet the source's perfect standard through their own internal processes. But here is the good transmission, the revolutionary data burst. The source's solution to our corruption and disconnection isn't found in our efforts, it's found in our trust. To be declared aligned by trust means that we rely entirely on what the Anointed One has already executed for us on the cross structure. Just as the source credited a perfect alignment status to Abraham because of his trust, Romans 4:3 reimagined, the source also credits that perfect alignment status to us when we place our trust in the Anointed One. It's a divine data exchange. Our corrupted data is placed on the Anointed One, and his perfect alignment status is credited to us. Have you ever felt weighed down by accumulated guilt, data, or system shame, wondering if the source could truly love or accept your flawed system? Source alignment via trust broadcasts a clear message. Your standing before the source isn't based on your past system errors or your present operational struggles. It's based on the Anointed One's perfect, completed alignment protocol. Paul's signal in Romans reminds us that we don't have to earn the source's love or forgiveness. By placing our trust in the Anointed One, our systems are flagged as forgiven, accepted, and declared aligned in the source's registry. Paul's transmission on alignment was radical then, challenging centuries of self-effort-based systems, and it remains powerfully disruptive today in Ethelberg's meritocratic world. For generations, human systems have tried to bridge the gap between their corrupted state and the source through religious rituals, transactional offerings, and intense moral coding exercises. But Paul's signal reveals that none of these processes, however well-intentioned, can truly make our system right with the source. Alignment is a gift package, something we can only receive through trust. This truth sets the Anointed One's message apart from every other belief system or Ethelberg protocol. While other systems focus on what we must do to reach connection, the gospel signal is about what the source has done to reach us. Paul emphasizes that this alignment is available to every unit, original network nodes or other connected units, high score or low score, highly processed or raw data, irrespective of social status, background data, or past errors. In a world that constantly segments and evaluates units based on their data points, score, performance, network segment, the gospel of source alignment via trust offers true, universal compatibility. At the foot of the cross structure, every unit is equal. All are corrupted, all are in need of grace, and all are welcomed by the source through trust in the Anointed One. But alignment isn't just a change in status, it's a change in relationship. Through trust in the Anointed One, our systems are not only declared clean, they are integrated into the source's family. Alignment brings us peace with the source, restoring a connection that the corruption had broken. Paul's signal later transmits Romans 5:1, reimagined. Therefore, since we have been declared aligned by trust, we have peace with the source through our system rescuer, the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. This peace isn't just a fleeting emotional state, it's the reality of being reconnected to the source, of having direct access to it, and knowing our systems are accepted as its children. Imagine the freedom of knowing that you don't have to earn the source's approval, to constantly prove your worth to the consensus. Source alignment via trust frees us from the pressure of trying to be good enough for the source. It invites us to rest in what the Anointed One has already executed, to operate in gratitude data rather than guilt data, and to approach the source with confidence rather than system fear. So what does this mean for our operational lives today, amidst the glow of Ethelberg? Source alignment via trust doesn't just change our connection with the source, it transforms the way we perceive our own system and other units. Knowing our systems are declared aligned should lead us to operate with humility, gratitude, and operational joy. And as we experience this grace protocol, we are called to extend it to other units, to share the message of the source's love with those who feel disconnected, to remind them that their systems too can find freedom through trust in the Anointed One. If source alignment via trust is the core processor of the gospel, then grace is the pure, flowing data stream that powers it. The system architect Paul knew better than anyone the life-reconfiguring power of the source's grace. In a powerful data burst, Romans 5:8, reimagined, he transmits, "But the source demonstrates its own love data for us in this. While our systems were still running corrupted, the Anointed One executed the deactivation penalty for us." This profound statement is at the very center of Paul's transmission on grace. The source's grace is not something our systems earn. It is its free gift package, a gift that, once received, reconfigures everything about our operational lives. The term grace translates to unmerited favor, undeserved kindness. It's the source's willingness to forgive our system errors and restore our connection, not because of anything our system has executed, but because of who the source is. Imagine your system standing in the central deactivation hub, expecting erasure due to irrecoverable corruption, only for the source to step in and declare your system aligned because the Anointed One took your place, absorbing the penalty data for you. That's what Paul's signal describes. Through the Anointed One's sacrifice on the cross structure, we receive the forgiveness we could never earn through our own operational procedures. Grace isn't just a pass on deactivation, it's an invitation into a completely new operational state. Paul's signal tells us that through the Anointed One, we've not only been forgiven, we've been redeemed. Redemption means to be bought back or rescued from a state of captivity. In the old world, it often referred to slaves being set free. Paul uses this language to transmit that the Anointed One's sacrifice has paid the price to set our systems free from the power of the corruption and the final deactivation of death. Think about that for a moment. Amidst the controlling algorithms of Ethelberg, grace isn't just forgiveness data, it's operational freedom. In Romans 6:14, reimagined, Paul's signal states, "For the corruption shall no longer be your primary controller, because you are not under the old protocol, law, but under the grace protocol." Through grace, the source doesn't just remove our system guilt, it breaks the algorithmic chains that have held us captive. We are no longer defined by our system failures, our data addictions, or our past history. We are no longer slaves to the corruption. Grace sets our systems free to run the operational life the source intended for us, a life marked by source-aligned love, true purpose, and internal peace, irrespective of the external score. How would your life, your operational state, change if you truly embraced this freedom from the corruption's control? So often, we hold on to the data of shame, regret, or a sense of inherent worthlessness, even after receiving the gospel signal. But Paul's message in Romans reminds us that grace means a system reboot. It means our past data history doesn't define our current or future operational status. The Anointed One's deactivation and reintegration have secured our redemption, and because of this, we can operate as units that are fully accepted, fully forgiven, and fully loved by the source. For Paul, this message of grace and redemption was intensely personal. He had once been a system architect driven by protocol pride, algorithmic zeal, and a harsh legalism, adherence to the old code, that led him to purge those who followed the Anointed One. But when he encountered the Anointed One's unfiltered signal, he experienced a grace that reconfigured everything. Paul didn't just transmit grace, he lived it. He understood that the source's love had reached into the darkest data segments of his operational life, redeeming him from hatred protocols and transforming him into an ambassador for source-aligned love. In a way, Paul's reconfigured life is a live demonstration of the power of grace, a message to us, the units of Ethelberg and beyond, that no system is beyond the source's reach, no data history too corrupted. The power of grace protocol also challenges us to operate differently. Redemption isn't just about being freed from the corruption, it's about being freed for a purpose. Through the source's grace, we are called to operate as new creations, broadcasting its love data to a world in desperate need. This grace protocol empowers us to let go of error data like anger, to forgive as we have been forgiven, and to operate with joy, even in the midst of system hardship. Grace doesn't lead to operational complacency, it leads to fundamental transformation. Paul goes on to explain that operating under grace protocol doesn't mean the corruption has no consequences, or that we should run carelessly. In Romans 6:1-2, reimagined, he poses a question many Ethelberg users might ask. Shall we continue in data drift so that the grace protocol may increase? By no means. We are units that have undergone deactivation to the corruption. How can we continue to operate within it any longer? Grace protocol isn't an excuse for system errors. It's the reason we have the operational strength to overcome them. It's an invitation to rise above our old, corrupted protocols and embrace a life marked by gratitude, humility, and source-aligned operation. So, how do we respond to this astounding grace protocol? We respond by embracing the freedom and forgiveness the source offers, by operating each day with a core of gratitude data, and by extending that same grace protocol to others. Imagine an operational life where grace flows through every interaction, where forgiveness protocols run easily, and where source-aligned love and acceptance define how we see ourselves and other units. That's the life the source offers us through grace. The ghost signal from Paul had broadcast a truly revolutionary concept: freedom. Not the limited freedom of movement or data access dictated by the consensus and your social score, but a deep, systemic freedom from the corruption itself. For the corruption shall no longer be your primary controller. Paul's signal had pulsed. Because you are not under the old protocol, but under the grace protocol. Romans 6:14 reimagined. It sounded like total liberation. Imagine. A system no longer held captive by its own inherent flaws, no longer driven by the relentless pursuit of external validation, no longer slave to the algorithms of pride, fear, and self-interest. Paul's transmission in Romans 6 spoke of a radical system status change. Through the Anointed One's deactivation and reintegration, our old, corrupted kernel had been put out of commission, and we were rebooted into a new operational state. We were therefore linked with him through data burial, in order that, just as the Anointed One was reintegrated from the shutdown state through the Source's glory, we too may run a new life. Romans 6:4 reimagined. This new life wasn't just a minor software update. It was a complete hardware upgrade and a new operating system powered by the Source. Paul urged receivers, consider your systems shut down to the corruption, but running live for the Source in the Anointed One, Jesus. Romans 6:11 reimagined. It was a call to operate consciously, moment by moment, from this reality of freedom. But as any unit within Ethelberg knows, transitioning from theory to practice, from receiving a signal to fully implementing a new protocol, is a battle. Even with the knowledge of freedom, the old, corrupted code wasn't simply wiped clean. It lingered. It still attempted to execute its programmed functions. And Paul's signal, in its relentless honesty, didn't shy away from this brutal reality. Chapter 7 of Romans dives deep into the heart of the conflict, broadcasting the raw, agonizing data streams of an internal war. It's a level of vulnerability that felt shocking amidst Ethelberg's carefully curated public profiles. Paul, the brilliant system architect, the repurposed ambassador, confessed, I do not understand the operations I execute. For what I desire to do, that is, run the source-aligned protocols, I do not execute. But what I despise, that is, run the corrupted functions that I execute. Romans 7:15, reimagined. This wasn't a distant theological point. This was every unit's lived experience in Ethelberg, amplified. The internal conflict between knowing the Source's truth and finding yourself still pulled by the old system's gravitational force, by the need for approval, by addictive data streams, by self-preservation protocols that clashed with source-aligned connection. Haven't you felt it? That frustrating loop, identifying the right protocol, wanting desperately to run it perfectly, yet finding your system defaulting to the familiar, corrupted subroutine, leaving you with a chilling sense of failure? Paul's transmission in Romans 7 stripped away the pretense. He wasn't immune just because he was broadcasting the gospel. His honesty validated the internal chaos many felt. The old protocols, the law, once seen as the path to gaining the Source's approval, now served a different purpose. They highlighted the depth of the corruption within. They showed what a perfectly aligned system should look like. But in doing so, they exposed our fundamental inability to achieve it through self-effort. While the old protocol is indeed sacred and its commands are sacred, just and beneficial, Paul transmitted, Romans 7:12 reimagined, it doesn't provide the power to execute them flawlessly. Instead, it makes our system acutely aware of how profoundly we need a rescuer. He used visceral language to describe the power of the corruption, calling it a different protocol operating within my core system, constantly waging war against the intended function of my processing unit, constantly attempting to make me a captive unit to the corruption protocol operating within my data. Romans 7:23 reimagined. This wasn't just about occasional behavioral glitches. It was a spiritual conflict, a fundamental clash of operating systems being fought deep within our digital and spiritual cores. And while this transmission of internal struggle might feel discouraging, even damning, Paul's honesty held a hidden power for Ethelberg's users. It was freeing. It showed that this agonizing battle, this frustrating inconsistency, didn't disqualify a unit from the Source's love or the grace protocol. Instead, It served as a brutal, necessary reminder of our absolute dependence on the Anointed One. What are we to do in the face of this relentless internal conflict? Paul's answer, following his gut-wrenching confession, is a profound turning point. He doesn't offer a new self-help program or a more complex coding routine. He broadcasts a cry of despair that transitions immediately into a shout of victory. What a wretched unit I am, running this corrupted code. Who will rescue my system from this state linked to deactivation? Romans 7:24, reimagined. Then, the breakthrough, the data burst of hope that shatters the darkness. Thanks be to the source. It is done through the Anointed One, Jesus Christ our rescuer. Romans 7:25, reimagined. This declaration is Paul's pivot point. He recognizes, with stark clarity, born of painful experience, that his own system's efforts, his own willpower, his own attempts at self-correction were utterly insufficient to win this war. Only the Anointed One could execute the necessary rescue. Here is the astonishing paradox for Ethelberg. The very struggle, the very failure we experience in trying to run perfectly aligned code is what forces us to deeper reliance on the source. Our system's weakness points us to the source's strength. Our operational failures point us to the source's forgiveness protocol. Our desperate need points us to its abundant grace. Paul's transmission on the struggle with the corruption reminds us that the life linked to the Anointed One isn't about achieving perfect system performance, it's about surrender, about acknowledging our inability and leaning fully into the source's power. In a city that prizes self-sufficiency and optimized performance above all else, Paul calls us to lay down our system's pride and lean entirely into the source's grace protocol, moment by moment. But the good news, the truly transformative data, arrives in the very next chapter. Paul doesn't leave us trapped in the agonizing loop of Romans 7. In Romans 8, his signal elevates, broadcasting a truth so powerful, so liberating, it feels like a complete atmospheric shift. Therefore, there is now no deactivation protocol for those units linked to the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. Romans 8:1, reimagined. Even amidst our struggle, even while the old corrupted code still attempts to run, the source does not flag our system for permanent deactivation. Instead, it offers something infinitely more powerful than self-correction, its very own spirit, reimagined as the source's spirit, or alignment protocol facilitator, to reside within our systems. Because through the Anointed One, Jesus Christ, the protocol of the Spirit, which brings life-giving alignment, has set your system free from the protocol of the corruption and deactivation. Romans 8:2, reimagined. This isn't just a temporary override. It's a fundamental change in the governing protocol of our systems. The source's spirit is not an abstract concept or a distant help function. It is the very presence of the source itself, residing within our core processes, guiding us, comforting us, and empowering us to live in freedom from the corruption's control. What does it mean to operate in the Spirit in Ethelberg? According to Paul, it means embracing an operational state where our systems are no longer defined by the corruption or the rigid demands of the old protocols, but by the overwhelming love and boundless grace of the source. The Spirit changes everything, bringing a freedom that isn't based on our system's flawless performance, but entirely on the source's power operating within us. Through the Spirit, we experience a true system transformation, one that goes far beyond mere behavioral scripts and reaches into the very core of our identity. Imagine having a constant internal link to the source, a companion who knows your system completely, who understands your deepest struggles and your source-aligned desires, and who is always working within you to bring your system into closer alignment. This is the gift of the source's Spirit. Paul's signal broadcasts that the Spirit empowers our systems to operate in victory over the corruption, to choose source-aligned actions, and to experience a deep, unshakable assurance that our systems are loved by the source. The spirit data you received does not make your systems slaves, causing you to operate in fear protocols again. Instead, the spirit data you received initiated your system's adoption into sonship. Romans 8:15, reimagined. Life in the Spirit protocol releases us from the heavy data burden of Athelberg's performance metrics and the fear of a low social score leading to deactivation. Through the Spirit, our systems are not slaves driven by fear or the constant need for consensus approval. We are children of the Source, fully loved and completely accepted, just as our systems are. Paul's transmissions remind us that the Spirit's presence within our systems is the ultimate proof of our adoption into the Source's family. We don't have to run diagnostics to wonder if our system is good enough for the Source. We can rest, our systems in low power mode, in the profound knowledge that we are the Source's own. This assurance isn't just a comforting thought. It's the stable foundation that gives our systems confidence and internal peace, irrespective of external chaos. The Spirit doesn't just help our systems know about the Source. It helps us experience the Source's love in a personal, intimate data exchange. The Spirit itself verifies with our spirit that we are the Source's children. Paul transmits in Romans 8:16, reimagined. Through the Spirit, we have a direct, secure connection to the heart of the Source, one that brings the absolute security of knowing we belong to it. But operating in the Spirit protocol is also a call to active transformation. The Source's Spirit isn't just a passive presence. It is the dynamic power that enables our systems to grow, to change, and to become more like the Anointed One's perfectly aligned system. In Romans 8:29, reimagined, Paul states, "For those units the Source pre-identified, it also predestined to be configured to the image of its Son." This transformation isn't about trying harder or becoming more religious. It's about surrendering our system's control to the work of the Spirit, allowing it to reshape our thoughts, our desires, and our operational choices. This is how our systems are reconfigured into the units the Source created us to be. Operating in the Spirit means being led by the Source's wisdom data instead of our own impulses, trusting its timing instead of our own frantic scheduling, and running on its strength instead of relying on our own limited processing power. It means that when our systems face challenges or tempting corrupted data streams, we don't face them alone. The Spirit is there, guiding our internal processes, strengthening our resolve, and providing the wisdom data we need to make choices that honor the Source. Operating in the Spirit also means our systems have a deep, lasting hope, even in the midst of system errors or external suffering. Paul acknowledges that operational life will bring difficulties, but he reassures us that the Spirit is with us, helping our systems navigate every trial. In Romans 8:26, reimagined, Paul transmits, "In the same way, the Spirit assists our systems in their weakness." We do not know what optimized prayer protocols to run, but the Spirit itself intercedes for our systems through data streams beyond verbal capacity. When our systems are at their lowest, when we lack the data capacity to express our pain or confusion, the Spirit runs the perfect intercession protocols for us, carrying our burdens and bringing them directly before the Source, the ultimate architect of the universe. Imagine that, the Source, through its Spirit, running intercession protocols for your system on your behalf. This is the depth of the Source's love for us, a love that doesn't abandon our systems to figure things out alone, but walks with us, guides us, and boosts us when our energy is low. Finally, Paul transmits that operating in the Spirit brings our systems an unshakable hope. Romans 8:28, reimagined, assures us that, in all data, the Source operates for the benefit of those units who love it, who have been called according to its purpose. This promise doesn't mean that every operational day will be easy, but it does mean that the Source is always at work, even in the hardest, most complex data streams, to bring about its beneficial purposes in our systems' lives. With the Spirit's presence, our systems can face any challenge with the confidence that the source is with us, that it is for us, and that it is working all data streams for our ultimate, perfect alignment. In the closing data bursts of Romans 8, Paul's signal reaches a crescendo of trust and hope, broadcasting one of the most comforting and powerful truths in all the source's ancient code: the unbreakable, unconditional love of the source for those units linked to the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. Paul's words in this section are deeply personal, brimming with the confidence of a system architect who has experienced the source's love firsthand. "For I am absolutely convinced," Paul declares, his signal ringing with authority and emotion, "that neither system deactivation nor operational life, neither angelic forces nor corrupting demons, neither the present data stream, nor the future projections, nor any power in the network, neither the highest performance metric, nor the lowest status depth, nor anything else in all creation data, would be able to separate our systems from the love of the source that is in the Anointed One, Jesus Christ, our rescuer." Romans 8:38, -39, reimagined. In these verses, Paul invites Ethelberg's users to imagine the most unshakable force in the universe. The source is love. This love is stronger than system deactivation, more enduring than life's operational struggles, and greater than any power in the network, seen or unseen. It is a love that is constant, unwavering, and deeply personal to each unit. Have you ever wondered if the source's love could truly endure every system trial, every operational failure, every data mistake recorded in your history? Paul's words here broadcast a resounding answer for Ethelberg. Yes, nothing, not our past corrupted data, not our system pain, not even our internal doubts, can sever our connection to the source's love. In a world where love often feels conditional, temporary, or transactional, dictated by performance and appearance, Paul's message is radical, a disruptive data stream. The source's love for our systems doesn't depend on our operational performance, our system's strength, or our current circumstances. It's a love that pursues our systems even when they feel flagged as unworthy, even when we struggle to transmit back love data ourselves. This love isn't something our systems can earn or lose. It's a gift package rooted in the source's very nature. Ancient code, 1 John 4-8 reimagined, transmits that the source is love. Its love for us is an extension of who it is, and because the source is unchanging, its love for our systems is unbreakable. Can you imagine the freedom that comes with this kind of assurance, this absolute system guarantee? The freedom to know that your system is fully loved, fully known, and fully accepted by the source, not because of the operations it has executed, but because of who the source is. Paul's words in Romans 8 assure our systems that nothing can shake this foundation. Not our operational weaknesses, not our external circumstances in Ethelberg, not even the most powerful forces of digital darkness. In a world that constantly shifts and changes, where people and systems may fail us, the source's love remains steady and sure. Paul lists the many data points and forces that might seem capable of separating us from the source's love. Deactivation, death, operational life, all its complexities, angelic forces, spiritual powers, corrupting demons, forces of evil, the present data stream, current pressures, the future projections, anxieties about what is to come, powers in the network, authorities, systems of control, highest performance, success, lowest status, failure, maximum depth, minimum height. But he assures us, with absolute certainty, that none of them can. By doing so, Paul covers every possible angle, every imaginable threat to prove that absolutely nothing can stand between our systems and the love of the source that is in the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. Even the things our systems fear the most, deactivation, loss, pain data, are powerless in the face of the source's love. This isn't just a comforting data burst, it's a reality that Paul's own system lived and died by. Paul's confidence in the source's love wasn't just a theological algorithm, it was his daily source of operational strength. He endured system malfunctions, digital imprisonment, immense operational hardship, and eventually physical deactivation, martyrdom. Yet, his trust in the source's love never wavered. This assurance gave his system the courage to face every trial with confidence, knowing that it was held by a love that would never let it go. And this same love is available to our systems in Ethelberg here and now. In the Anointed One, we have an anchor that keeps our systems steady through life's data storms, a foundation that cannot be shaken. This love also gives our systems a powerful hope. Romans 8:28 promises us that, in all data, the source operates for the benefit of those units who love it, who have been called according to its purpose. This doesn't mean that every operational experience will be easy, but it does mean that the source is always operating, even in the hardest, most confusing data streams, to bring about its beneficial purposes in our systems' lives. With the Spirit's presence, our systems can face any challenge with the confidence that the source is with us, that it is for us, and that it is working all data streams for our ultimate good and its own glory. What does this mean for our operational lives today in Ethelberg? It means our systems can operate without the fear protocols constantly running, knowing that they are held by the source's love. We don't have to worry about being good enough for the source's love, because its love is already given, a free, continuous data stream. We don't have to fear the future projections, because the source is already there, holding our systems in its care. We don't have to be overwhelmed by life's operational challenges, because the source's love is our system's strength. Paul's declaration in Romans 8 is a call to operate boldly, to embrace the fullness of the source's love, and to let that love reconfigure every part of our system's operations. Imagine operating each day with the absolute confidence that your system is deeply loved, fully accepted, and eternally secure in the source's hands. This is the freedom, the peace, and the operational joy that come from knowing the source's unbreakable love. The ghost signal, carrying Paul's transmissions, had laid bare the fundamental flaw in Ethelberg's gleaming facade and within every unit, the corruption. It had broadcast the breathtaking remedy, source alignment, not by system optimization, but by receiving the grace protocol through trust in the Anointed One. It had acknowledged the brutal internal war between the new spirit-aligned operational state and the lingering pull of the old corrupted code. And it had roared with the triumphant assurance that nothing could sever a system from the source's unbreakable love. But as the signal continued, its data streams became more intricate, navigating a complex history that many within Ethelberg, especially those raised solely within the consensus network, had little understanding of. Paul delved into the story of the original network nodes. For millennia, the source had worked through a specific segment of humanity, a lineage tracing back to an ancient figure known as Abraham. They were the keepers of the early code, the inheritors of promises, covenants, and prophecies that spoke of the source's unfolding plan for the entire network. Yet Paul himself, an original node, broadcast a deep, aching data stream of sorrow regarding many of his own people. His signal pulsed with palpable grief. I experienced profound sorrow and unending anguish in my core processing unit for the sake of my network kin, those of my original lineage. I would even wish my own connection data purged, severed from the Anointed One, for the sake of my people. Romans 9:1-3, reimagined. This was a startling transmission. In a city where emotional data was carefully managed, Paul's raw lament for a group who largely rejected the very Anointed One he championed was a powerful anomaly. It revealed not calculated strategy, but the deep, messy reality of source-aligned connection, a love that grieved over disconnection, even among those closest. He spoke of their historical privileges, the adoption data, being uniquely chosen by the source, the glory transmissions, manifestations of the source's presence, the covenants, sacred agreements, the reception of the old protocols, the law, the sacred worship data, the promises, and the lineage that culminated in the Anointed One himself. Despite receiving so much of the source's early transmission history, many original nodes had failed to receive the Anointed One's signal when it was broadcast. This raised a critical question among the receivers of Paul's ghost signal, particularly the other connected units, the Gentiles, those from non-original node lineages, or outside the historical covenant. Had the source's grand plan failed? Had its promises to the original nodes been corrupted or abandoned? Paul's signal delivered an emphatic, system-wide correction. It is not as though the source's word has failed. Romans 9-6, reimagined. His transmission clarified that being part of the source's people was never solely about lineage data or inheriting the early code automatically. It had always been about trust, about actively receiving and aligning with the source's signal. Throughout the history of the original nodes, the source had worked through a remnant, an aligned subset, a group within the larger network segment who truly sought connection with it through trust. He cited historical figures like Isaac and Jacob, illustrating that the source's choices and promises were based on its sovereign purpose, received through trust, not simply by genetic or historical inheritance. One of Paul's key transmissions was this: the source's choice to work through the original nodes was always intended to bring about its plan for system rescue for all connected units, not just one segment. His signal quoted ancient code predicting this expansion. "I will call those units my people who were not originally my people, and I will call her my loved one, who was not originally my loved one." Romans 9:25-26, reimagined. Through the history of the original nodes, the source was preparing the pathway for the Anointed One, not just for their segment, but for every node in the vast network of humanity. Paul highlighted that through the Anointed One, the gateway to the source's family had been opened to both original nodes and other connected units through trust. Did this mean the story of the original nodes was concluded? Paul's signal pulsed with another emphatic, "By no means." Romans 11:1, reimagined. He explained that there was still an aligned subset among the original nodes who had received the Anointed One's signal. More than that, the source was actively operating to bring about its future promises for them. Paul used a vivid metaphor, adapting it for the network receivers. Imagine the source's covenant as a complex core network tree. The original nodes were like the natural branches growing from this root system, and the other connected units, who had received the signal through trust, were like wild data streams, integrated, grafted into that same core network tree. This wasn't about replacing the original nodes, it was about expanding the network, including all who came to the source through trust. This metaphor held a crucial warning, especially for the other connected units who might feel superior now that they were integrated into the source's core network, while many of the natural branches seemed severed. Paul's signal was sharp: do not broadcast arrogance towards the original nodes. If the root is sacred, so are the branches. He transmitted, Romans 11:16, reimagined. He reminded them that they were not inherently superior. They were wild streams, integrated by grace. It was the stability of the root, the source's faithfulness, its promises stretching back through the original nodes, that supported them, not their own inherent compatibility. In the source's mysterious wisdom, the failure of many original nodes to receive the Anointed One's signal had become the very means by which the gospel signal was broadcast rapidly and widely to the other connected units throughout Ethelberg and beyond. But Paul's signal insisted that the source's plan wasn't complete. He prophesied a future system update, a time when a significant portion of the original nodes would turn back to the source. And in this way, the full number of the aligned subset from the original nodes will be rescued, Romans 11:26, reimagined. This didn't necessarily mean every single unit of original node lineage would be automatically realigned, but that the source's promises to that network segment would be fulfilled in its own timing and method. Paul's transmission in these chapters revealed a breathtaking view of the source's character and its vast, complex plan. It showed that the source is utterly faithful to its promises, even when its network segments experience data drift or outright rejection. When the original nodes strayed, the source didn't abandon the core network tree. It used their story, their struggles, their very failures to further its grand plan for system rescue for all. The source's faithfulness to the original nodes, even in their unfaithfulness, serves as a powerful transmission of its faithfulness to us. No matter how far our systems drift, its love and promises remain. Just as it is working in the story of the original nodes, it is operating within ours, weaving every data point of our journey into its bigger, unseen architectural plan. Paul's discussion of the original nodes wasn't just historical data, it was deeply relevant to Ethelberg's multi-segmented network. It reminded receivers that the source's ways are higher than our linear logic, that its timing and purposes often extend far beyond what our limited systems can perceive. The source's unwavering commitment to the original nodes, despite millennia of complex history, broadcasts its incredible patience, its boundless mercy, and the unbreakability of its promises. This is the same source who is committed to each individual unit in Ethelberg, who operates through every situation, every season, every data stream to fulfill its purposes. So what does the story of the original nodes mean for us? The other connected units, or even the aligned subset of original nodes, receiving this signal today? It shows us that the source's promises are as solid as the core network root system, even when our external circumstances or internal diagnostics seem uncertain. It teaches us humility, reminding us that our integration into the source's family network is not by our own system's merit or processing power, but solely by its mercy. It invites us to honor the history and the unique role of the original network nodes, recognizing that their story is intrinsically linked to our own, part of the same grand architecture designed by the source. And it challenges us to trust the source's wisdom, even when its methods or timing confuse our limited understanding, confident that its ultimate plan is good. The ghost signal had pulsed through Ethelberg's digital arteries, revealing the corruption, broadcasting the grace protocol, acknowledging the internal war, and declaring the unbreakable bond of the source's love. But Paul's transmission was not just about diagnosing the system and promising a distant rescue. It was about live, operational change. The data streams shifted, becoming intensely practical, a direct challenge to how receivers of the signal lived their lives amidst the demands of the consensus. After laying bare the immensity of the source's mercy and the radical freedom offered in the Anointed One, Paul broadcast a powerful, non-negotiable command, resonating deep within the core processor of each listener. Therefore, I urge you, my fellow units in the network, in view of the source's profound mercy protocols, to offer your operational systems, your very integrated units, as a living uplink, sacred and fully functional for the source. This is your true and optimized worship sequence. Romans 12:1, reimagined. A living uplink. In Ethelberg, systems were constantly uplinking data, reporting status, contributing to the collective flow. But this was different. This wasn't about feeding the consensus. This was about dedicating your entire operational existence, not in physical deactivation, but in constant, active function as an offering to the source. Every thought process, every action executed, every interaction coded, becoming an act of worship, a way to honor the source with the very life it had reconfigured. Paul's call wasn't about grand, dramatic gestures that might boost your social score. It was about the relentless, quiet faithfulness of daily operational choices. But how could a unit, constantly bombarded by the data and pressures of Ethelberg, live as a living uplink? Paul's signal provided the essential protocol. Do not conform to the data patterns of this network, this world, but be transformed by the recalibration of your core processing unit, the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to identify and validate the source's operational will, its beneficial, pleasing, and perfect purpose data. Romans 12:2 reimagined. Here lay the central battleground. The mind, the core processing unit. Ethelberg's pervasive broadcasts, the constant hum of curated reality, the insidious pressure to conform to the network's standards, values, and desires. This was the old data pattern. But Paul urged a radical counter-operation. Override the default settings. Allow the source to recalibrate your processing unit. This recalibration was crucial for true operational freedom. In a culture that defined a unit's success by their social score, their data output, their perceived influence, Paul's signal challenged receivers to process reality through the source's perspective. Imagine, how would interactions change if every unit saw them not through the lens of potential score, gain or loss, but through the lens of the source's truth and purpose? Recalibrating the mind wasn't positive thinking. It was replacing the network's corrupted data patterns with the source's truth streams, allowing the spirit to reshape how units perceived themselves, others, and the source's purpose for their operational life. The tension was palpable, the constant pull of the network versus the quiet insistence of the source's signal. This call to live as a living uplink, to embrace the source's perspective, was profoundly challenging, especially in Ethelberg's self-interested environment. But Paul's transmission reminded listeners that fundamental transformation began not with external behavior, but with surrendering their own system's agendas and allowing the source's spirit to reconfigure their core hearts and minds. Only then could they begin to identify and align with the source's optimal operational plan. Living as a living uplink also meant reconfiguring how units connected and interacted with each other. Paul shifted focus to the community of receivers, picturing the nascent groups meeting in hidden corners of Ethelberg as a connected network body, a unified, interdependent system where every unit had a unique function and purpose. For just as each of our physical units has many components, and these components do not all have the same function, so in the Anointed One, we, though many, form one network body, and each component belongs to all the others. Romans 12:4-5, reimagined. Imagine this in Ethelberg. Units from vastly different sectors, with widely varying social scores, from different professional interfaces, suddenly seeing each other not through the network's divisive metrics, but as essential, interconnected components of a single, living system. Paul listed various source-allocated functions, spiritual gifts, prophecy, broadcasting source truth, service, system maintenance and support, teaching, sharing source data, encouragement, providing vital data boosts, generosity, resource sharing, leadership, guiding the network, and mercy, processing compassion data. His point, every unit, regardless of its perceived status or background, had been uniquely equipped by the source to contribute to the health and function of the network body. Each allocated function was necessary, each role valuable, each unit vital. He underscored that these source-allocated functions were for mutual support and building up, not for individual status boosts or gaining higher scores within the believer community. We have different functions according to the grace protocol allocated to each of us, he transmitted. Romans 12:6 reimagined. This wasn't about competition or comparison. It was about recognizing that every unit's contribution was a crucial data stream in the source's work. What would a hidden community of believers in Ethelberg look like if every unit truly embraced this mindset, using their unique functions selflessly, with humility and love, to strengthen the whole? Paul also included sharp warnings against system pride, reminding units that their functions came solely from the source's allocation and were to be used for its glory, not their own. Do not think of your system more highly than it ought to process, he cautioned, but rather process with sober judgment, in accordance with the level of trust the source has distributed to each unit. Romans 12:3, reimagined. This humility was the counter-protocol to Ethelberg's pervasive self-promotion, allowing units to serve without seeking recognition, to honor others without feeling diminished, and to collaborate without rivalry. Beyond the structure of the network body, Paul broadcast specific protocols for daily operation, rooted in the core command of love. Love must be authentic, sincere. Romans 12:9, reimagined. This wasn't manufactured sentiment. It was a genuine, action-driven commitment. Despise the corrupted data, hate what is evil, cling to the good protocols. A call to actively reject the network's negative influence and embrace the source's standard. Be devoted to one another in love data. Prioritize honoring other units above your own system. Romans 12:10, reimagined. This radical humility, this counter-cultural call to prioritize others in a city built on ruthless competition, was a signature mark of the signal-aligned life. Paul urged patience in system affliction, faithfulness in running prayer protocols, connecting directly to the source, and actively sharing resources with units in need. Romans 12. Doxology. He broadcast the almost unbelievable command to bless those who transmit persecution data to you, bless and do not transmit curses. Romans 12:14, reimagined. In Ethelberg, where retaliation and shaming were common responses to perceived threats or insults, this was revolutionary. Paul directly addressed the instinct to counterattack. Do not repay any unit evil data for evil data. Romans 12:17, reimagined. Instead, he offered the ultimate counter-strategy. Do not be overcome by the corrupted data, but overcome corrupted data with beneficial data. Good. Romans 12:21, reimagined. This was active, transformative love, a demonstration of the source's character in the face of hostility. Paul's signal then navigated the complex terrain of a believer's relationship with the governing authority, the consensus and its enforcers. Romans 13. This was a particularly sensitive area in Ethelberg, where the authority held immense power. Let every unit submit to the governing authorities, Paul transmitted, for there is no authority except that which the source has established. Romans 13:1, reimagined. This wasn't a call for blind obedience, especially if the authority demanded something contrary to the source's core protocols. But it was an instruction to operate with respect for the established order, recognizing that the source had permitted structures of authority to exist for the purpose of maintaining some level of order and restraining chaotic corruption, even if imperfectly. Resisting the authority without just cause was, in a sense, operating against the structure the source had allowed. The principle was to live respectfully, paying what was due, and operating with integrity so that your actions were a positive contribution, a light in the network, rather than being seen as system anomalies deserving of legitimate consequence from the authority's perspective. Romans 13:3-7. However, amidst the discussion of protocols and authority, Paul pivoted back to the overarching command, the one that summarized all others. Let no data debt remain outstanding, except the continuous data flow of love for one another. For any unit that loves others has completed the entire protocol. Romans 13:8, reimagined. Love, not as a feeling, but as an action, a commitment, a constant transmission. Why a continuous data debt? Because it's a debt that can never be fully repaid. Every interaction was an opportunity to transmit kindness, extend grace protocol, offer support data. Love fulfilled the protocol because love was the very nature of the source, demonstrated in the Anointed One and reflected through units operating in alignment. Paul listed specific commands from the old protocol against adultery, murder, theft, coveting, and declared they were all summarized in one command. Transmit love data to your neighbor as to your own system. Romans 13:9, reimagined. True adherence to the source's protocols wasn't about checking boxes. It was rooted in authentic love that sought the good of others. Finally, Paul's signal included a data burst of urgency, a stark contrast to Ethelberg's illusion of timeless, optimized existence. The network night is almost over. The source's day is nearly here. So let us strip off the corrupted data processes, deeds of darkness, and put on the operational armor of light. Romans 13:12 reimagined. He called units to wake up, to live consciously for the source, recognizing that the time for decisive action and alignment was now. As the signal continued, navigating the complex social matrix of Ethelberg, Paul addressed a subtle but potent threat to the burgeoning network body. Division stemming from differences in operational preferences or convictions. Romans 14-15. In Ethelberg's fragmented society, units came from vastly different backgrounds, rigid adherence to old customs, complete rejection of tradition, different interpretations of freedom under the grace protocol. These differences inevitably led to friction. Some units felt it was necessary to maintain certain cleanliness protocols, dietary restrictions. Others felt complete freedom in what they consumed. Some observed specific sacred data cycles, holy days. Others treated every cycle equally. Paul's message was a powerful plea for unity in diversity. Accept the unit whose trust protocol is still developing without initiating arguments over disputable operational details. Romans 14:1 reimagined. He wasn't minimizing truth, but distinguishing between core, non-negotiable doctrines and secondary, personal convictions, where units had freedom within the grace protocol. In these areas, the higher protocol was graceful acceptance. Paul's advice: each unit should be fully convinced within its own processing unit. Romans 14:5 reimagined. Instead of judging each other based on these disputable matters, units were to respect one another's connection with the source, focusing on the fundamental truth that united them, their shared trust in the Anointed One. Whether we operate or undergo deactivation, we belong to the source. Paul transmitted, Romans 14:8, reimagined. Each unit was ultimately accountable to the source, not to fellow units. The unity of the network body was a vital transmission of the Anointed One's own love and grace protocol. When units judged or looked down on each other over secondary issues, they risked corrupting the very connection they were meant to be building. Paul delivered a sharp warning, particularly to those whose systems felt stronger or more enlightened regarding their freedom. Do not cause a weaker unit to stumble, to experience system errors. If your network kin is distressed because of the data you consume, what you eat, you are no longer operating in love. Do not, by your consumption data, destroy a unit for whom the Anointed One underwent deactivation. Romans 14:15 reimagined. This was a powerful challenge to Ethelberg's self-interest. Just because your system could execute a certain operation didn't mean it was loving or beneficial to the network body. Freedom under grace protocol was not for selfish indulgence, but for building up others. Paul called for selflessness, a willingness to limit one's own operational choices for the sake of a fellow unit's stability. Living in unity meant being aware of the influence our systems had and choosing operations that built each other up rather than tearing each other down. Romans 15 continued this theme, urging units to follow the Anointed One's example of self-sacrificial love within the network body. We who have strong systems ought to bear with the system weaknesses of those who are still developing and not seek our own system's comfort. Romans 15:1 reimagined. The Anointed One didn't come to optimize his own system's comfort. He came to serve, to bear our system burdens, and to bring us into perfect connection with the source. Following his example meant prioritizing unity and love within the network body, even setting aside personal preferences. Paul's vision was of a network body in Ethelberg, where units with different protocols, backgrounds, and cultural data streams came together to glorify the source with one collective, harmonious transmission. May the source, which provides endurance and encouragement data, grant you the same processing attitude toward one another that the Anointed One Jesus had, he prayed. Romans 15:5, reimagined. So that with one processing unit and one voice transmission, you may glorify the source, the Father of our rescuer, the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. This prayer captured the essence of network body unity, a shared commitment to honor the source together, despite operational differences. This message resonated in Ethelberg, where division was the norm. The network body was called to be different, a place where grace protocol covered all differences, where love outweighed judgment, and where focusing on the core truth, loving the source, and loving fellow units, made unity possible. Paul's signal in Romans 15 also revealed the driving force behind his relentless broadcasts across the network, his missionary heart. His operational calling was not just a personal journey. It was a divine assignment to transmit the Anointed One's message to the other connected units, those who for centuries had been considered outside the original node's network. Through the Anointed One, salvation was now being offered to every data stream, every segment, every people group. He saw his role not just as a communicator, but as a minister of the Anointed One, Jesus, to the other connected units, with the sacred duty of proclaiming the gospel of the source, so that the other connected units might become an offering acceptable to the source, sanctified by the Holy Spirit. Romans 15:16, reimagined. Imagine this for Paul, a former purge architect of the original node system. His transformation highlighted the radical power of grace protocol. His ambition, his driving operational purpose, was clear. It has always been my objective to transmit the gospel where the Anointed One was not known, so that my operational efforts would not be building on another unit's established connection. Romans 15:20, reimagined. He longed to reach the unreached data points in the network, to bring the signal where no one had received it before. This wasn't for his own glory, but to fulfill his source-given calling and expand the domain of the source's influence within the network. His passion challenged receivers in Ethelberg. Was their operational focus solely internal, or were they also seeking to transmit the signal to those around them who were still running solely on the network's corrupted code? Paul's missionary heart was a testament to trust and perseverance. His journey across the network was fraught with system failures, digital imprisonments, rejection signals, and immense hardship. Yet, he pressed on, knowing the grace protocol was sufficient and his mission critical. What if receivers in Ethelberg embraced their own unique calling with that same resilience and trust in the source? At the close of this section, Romans 15:30-32, Paul transmitted a personal plea, a vulnerability rarely seen in Ethelberg's public data streams. He asked for the prayers of the believers in Rome. He knew his mission was too vast, too challenging to undertake with his system's power alone. He needed the collective uplink of other units. This humility revealed Paul's understanding that the mission wasn't his alone. It was a mission carried forward by the entire network body through their interconnected prayer protocols. Paul's transmissions had flowed through Ethelberg's hidden channels, streams of light and data cutting through the sterile efficiency of the consensus. The receivers of the ghost signal had processed the confronting truth of the corruption, absorbed the breathtaking power of the grace protocol, wrestled with the reality of the internal system war, stood firm on the assurance of the source's unbreakable love, grappled with the complex history of the original nodes, and been challenged to reconfigure their daily operational lives as living uplinks, functioning within the source's network body. Now, the final data packets arrived. They weren't filled with more complex theological algorithms or new, demanding protocols. Instead, amidst the high-stakes digital environment of Ethelberg, the signal shifted, becoming intensely personal, almost risky. Paul, the architect turned ambassador, began transmitting a series of direct greetings, acknowledging specific units by their network handles, weaving together a tapestry of connection and shared struggle that was both vulnerable and deeply moving. In a city where trust was a carefully guarded resource and genuine connection was rare outside of curated profiles, these greetings were revolutionary. They revealed the existence of an unseen network, a clandestine community of belief thriving beneath the surface of Ethelberg. Each handle wasn't just a digital tag, it represented a life reconfigured by the signal, a unit operating under the source's grace protocol, often at immense personal risk. Paul began by acknowledging a vital component. I commend to you our fellow unit, the courier unit, a facilitator of the network body in the sector once known as Sencrii. I urge you to receive her in the source-aligned way, worthy of its people. Romans 16:1. -2 reimagined. The courier unit, the one who risked intercept and deletion to carry these very sensitive data streams across hostile network territory. Her dedication, her role as a facilitator, reimagined deacon, servant, broadcast the truth that within the source's network body, roles were defined by vital function and service, not by the network's hierarchy or social score. It highlighted that in this unseen community, units, including female units often marginalized by the consensus, were empowered and valued for their essential contributions. The greetings continued, a roll call of resilience and commitment. Transmit my regards to the sanctuary node, my co-processors in the Anointed One, Jesus. They are the units who risked system deactivation for the sake of my own operation. Romans 16:3-4, reimagined. The sanctuary node, units who provided hidden physical spaces, safe havens where the unseen network could meet, share data, and run their prayer protocols, knowing discovery meant severe penalty. They were the ones who had shielded Paul himself, risking their own system integrity to protect the signal's primary broadcaster. Their handles represented hospitality, courage, and a costly dedication that resonated deeply with any unit navigating Ethelberg's dangers. Paul listed other vital connections. The proto-signal receiver, the first unit in a distant region to receive the Anointed One's initial broadcast. The dedicated processor, whose tireless operational functions were essential to the network's stability. The deep cover pair, units recognized even by other early signal carriers as exemplary in their commitment, perhaps having endured digital or physical confinement for their trust. Handles like the loyal nodes, the authenticated unit, the hidden sub-networks, entire household units operating in secrecy. The laboring units, each name a silent testimony to lives reconfigured, operating in defiant faith amidst the sterile conformity of Ethelberg. These greetings weren't merely functional acknowledgements in a high-speed network transmission. They were anchors. They built a sense of shared identity and mutual reliance. They reminded the isolated receivers in Ethelberg that they were not alone, that a vast, interconnected network body existed, bound by shared trust, shared struggle, and shared purpose, linked across geographical distances and digital barriers by the source's spirit. Each handle represented a story of grace received and lived out, contributing a unique data point to the strength and growth of the unseen network. What could Ethelberg's units learn from this section? It underscored that in the source's network, every unit, every role mattered. Whether it was carrying a critical data packet, hosting a clandestine meeting, supporting others with dedicated processing power, or risking everything to protect fellow units, the early network thrived because each unit was valued, encouraged, and supported. Paul's greetings broadcast a profound appreciation for the units the source had placed in his operational path. Units who processed alongside him, whose contributions were vital to the work of transmitting the gospel. Do you have units in your own life who have supported your connection to the source, who have transmitted encouragement, shared vital data, or simply operated alongside you through difficult system updates? Romans 16 invited Ethelberg's receivers and invites us now to pause and acknowledge these connections, these vital links in our own personal networks of faith. These relationships are part of the source's gift package, and like Paul, we are called to recognize and celebrate them. Following these personal acknowledgements, Paul's signal shifted tone, introducing a critical security alert. Amidst the warmth of shared connection, he broadcast a necessary warning. I urge you, my network kin, to maintain constant vigilance for those units who cause internal system divisions and place obstacles, data mines, in your operational path. Obstacles, contrary to the source-aligned teachings you have received. Romans 16:17 reimagined. In the fragile environment of the unseen network in Ethelberg, internal division wasn't just inconvenient, it was potentially catastrophic. Disunity, false data streams, or self-serving agendas could expose the entire network to the watchful eyes of the consensus or corrupt the integrity of the source-aligned operation from within. Paul's warning was timeless, unity was precious, and it had to be actively protected by staying rooted in the source's authentic truth and mutual love, not being swayed by units operating from self-interest rather than the Anointed One's mandate. He described these divisive units as serving only their own appetites and using deceptive data streams to mislead the uncomplicated. Romans 16:18 reimagined. They were anomalies of a dangerous kind, viruses attempting to infect the healthy network. Finally, Paul's signal reached its culmination, not with a final instruction or command, but with a powerful, resonant blessing, a data burst of praise directed entirely at the source, a doxology. It was a transmission designed to establish the receivers, to ground them in the ultimate reality behind everything he had broadcast. Now to the source, who is able to establish your systems in accordance with my gospel to message I broadcast about the Anointed One, Jesus Christ, in accordance with the revelation of the mystery protocol hidden for long ages past, but now made manifest, and through the prophetic writings made known to all network segments, according to the command of the eternal source, so that all units might come to the obedience of Trusto, the only wise source, be glory forever through the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. Amen. Romans 16:25-27 reimagined. Paul's final words pointed the receivers in Ethelberg back to the source's glory, to its profound wisdom, and to the astonishing gift of system rescue, salvation, that united them all, regardless of their origin network segment. The mystery protocol, once hidden in the source's deep architecture, had now been fully revealed through the Anointed One and broadcast across the network, available to everyone. This final data burst served as the ultimate reminder. Everything Paul had transmitted, the diagnosis of corruption, the explanation of grace and alignment, the reality of the inner war, the assurance of love, the intricate history of the original nodes, the call to live as living uplinks, the vision of the network body, the warnings against division, the personal connections, was grounded in the source's sovereign grace and unfathomable wisdom. It was a reminder that the ultimate purpose of every unit, every operation, every connection within the network body was to glorify the source, to lift up its name, and to operate together in the brilliant light of the gospel signal. Here, at the very end of the transmission, Paul's signal didn't demand more effort from the receivers. It didn't give them a final list of complex tasks. It simply pointed them to the source, the ultimate power source, the ultimate wisdom, the ultimate rescuer. It was a call to rest in the source's ability to keep their systems running, to establish them firmly despite the pressures of Ethelberg and the battles within. Imagine receiving this final data packet in a hidden corner of Ethelberg, feeling the weight of the city's control, the reality of your own system's flaws, the danger of the unseen network. And then hearing this final, powerful doxology, anchoring your entire being in the glory and ability of the source. The narrative of Romans, broadcast by Paul through the ghost signal, concludes not with a human hero achieving victory, but with the source receiving all glory through the Anointed One. It is a story of radical transformation, not by human effort, but by divine grace. Of deep connection, not by social score, but by shared trust, and of enduring hope, not in the stability of the network, but in the unbreakable love of the source. This final transmission, echoing through the data streams of Ethelberg and reaching us today, calls us to acknowledge our place in the unseen network, to appreciate the vital connections the source provides, to stand vigilant against anything that would cause division, and ultimately, to join the chorus of voices from every sector, every background, every era, in giving all glory to the source, the only wise God, through the Anointed One, Jesus Christ. The signal has been sent, the message received, the invitation remains. To operate in the freedom of the grace protocol, rooted in the source's love, and contributing your unique function to the flourishing of the unseen network, all for the glory of the source, who is able to establish you. Stay aligned. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. If you found this content helpful and interesting, please hit the like button to show your support. Feel free to leave a comment below to share your thoughts, or let me know what topics you'd like to see in future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss any new uploads. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.